First, we'll talk about the law of dominance. And this normally, when it follows Mendel's laws, means that there will be two alleles for a single trait, and one will be fully dominant and one will be fully recessive, and the recessive allele will only be demonstrated in the phenotype when, or observable in the phenotype, when the individual is a homozygous, or has a homozygous genotype. However, there are some characteristics, some traits, which don't follow the law of dominance. For example, there's something called incomplete dominance. So this is an example where we see the normal kind of Mendelian layout where the individual that has a homozygous dominant genotype is going to show the particular dominant phenotype. And then the individual who is a heterozygote, has one copy of each allele, is still going to show the dominant phenotype. So notice that both of these are above this dotted line, which indicates that they are demonstrating or showing the dominant phenotype. Now, this individual, as we would predict by Mendel's laws, has a homozygous recessive genotype, and they also show the recessive phenotype. However, we can compare that to this situation where we actually have three different phenotypes. There's still only two alleles in this case, but the alleles show incomplete dominance. And the red is considered to be dominant and the white is considered to be recessive, but when you have a heterozygote, then that individual has a pink phenotype. Sometimes this is also called blending. And so again, we see here in the Punnett square that the individuals, the offspring that are heterozygous, are pink in color rather than showing the dominant phenotype, which we would expect according to Mendel's laws. And if we apply that to this graph here, then we see this time there are two dotted lines because there are three different phenotypes, and each genotype is in a different phenotypic class or shows a different phenotype. Sometimes the heterozygous phenotype is called an intermediate phenotype because it's in between the dominant and the recessive phenotype, but it really depends on what trait you're talking about. So some examples of this might be flowering time for plants. So certain plants might flower early, and then there might also be an allele for late flowering, but